Welcome into the Wiltfong Whip Around with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Monday, September 16th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and we got the best insider in the country, Steve Wiltfong. He's going to be on this show. We're going to hit on the biggest developments from the weekend, and there was a lot of them. So just sit back next 20 or 30 minutes and get caught up on recruiting. That's all you got to do. But first, actually, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. Just do that for me, please. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, so jump on board and hit subscribe. Also, if you've been thinking about signing up for On3, and I know you have, I can get you there for just $1. Use promo code FONG1. That's all you got to do. Go to on3.com, use promo code FONG1, and you can read everything Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons, Pete Nakos, all the great insiders. You can read them all for just $1 using promo code FONG1. All right, let's get to it. Now, we're going to head to Columbia, South Carolina, and talk about this thrilling game between LSU and the South Carolina Gamecocks. In the second half of Saturday's game, the crowd was going crazy, Steve. You could tell that this was one of the most electric atmospheres we've seen in this early season. It wouldn't end that way. LSU comes out on top. They win 36-33, but it was an amazing atmosphere. Do you think that despite the loss, perhaps a victory on the recruiting trail for South Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. I think South Carolina was able to show the trajectory of this program under Shane Beamer and his staff and the potential that they have on the field. And that starts with quarterback Lenoris Sellers, a former on 300, top 100 prospect who looked unstoppable under center before he got injured in that ball game. It's hard to imagine a scenario where South Carolina loses if Lenoris Sellers is on the field. And I think offensive linemen, receivers see an opportunity to play with him for a couple seasons. A guy that's got a chance now, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing in the Heisman odds down the road with the type of performance he had in this game. They're going to look to get him healthy for Ole Miss. They got the Akron game coming up. Then they got a bye week. Then they get another opportunity against a big-time opponent in Ole Miss. Every week in the SEC, it seems like you get these kind of chances. And South Carolina, in my opinion, did not squander this one. From the atmosphere, ESPN College Game Day being there, to the performance on the field, they were exciting, and the recruits I talked to were buzzing about it.
Yeah, speaking of, here's some big names on campus. Now, we did a recruit reaction show on Saturday. You guys can go find that on our channel. Had a lot of fun talking. Instant reaction, but you've had a little bit more time, Steve, to get some more intel. I want to talk first about edge Jared Smith, who's committed to Auburn, borderline 5-star edge out of the state of Alabama. He was on campus at South Carolina, and like you said, I mean, when his decision came down to when he picked Auburn, South Carolina was right there. So how important, how impactful was this trip for Smith?
Well, things started picking up with South Carolina again, Josh, the week prior when the Gamecocks went on the road, went into Lexington, and absolutely destroyed Kentucky, the same Kentucky team that just took Georgia to the wire on the same field this past Saturday night. So Jared Smith watched South Carolina play that game and was like, that's when he told me that he started thinking about visiting South Carolina the next weekend and ended up making it into Columbia to watch them play LSU. And look, there's been times in this recruitment where I thought South Carolina was clearly the one to beat. He was a player that they recruited this cycle to the same magnitude that they recruited Dylan Stewart in the cycle before. And it doesn't hurt South Carolina that Jared Smith and Dylan Stewart have formed a bond, a connection, and he sees Dylan Stewart's career really taking off for South Carolina. Now, Jared Smith tells me that he's locked in with Auburn. He's going to take his official visit to the Plains in a couple weekends when they host Oklahoma. That's going to be a major recruiting weekend for Auburn. I don't have him on flip watch yet, but I do know that Shane Beamer, Sterling Lucas, and this South Carolina staff not just going away. This wasn't just a visit, and that each side moves on. Dialogue will remain. South Carolina will continue to push. And like a lot of these recruitments, we'll see what happens at the end when everybody puts everything on the table. But South Carolina creating some intrigue with Jared Smith right now, who says he's locked in with Auburn, and he'll be back on the Plains in 2 weeks when the Tigers host the Sooners.
All right. Now, there was another surprise visitor, meaning a visitor that we didn't know that was going to show up until he showed up. That's defensive lineman Kevin Wynn out of the state of Georgia, but he's committed to Florida State. Obviously, Florida State with that 0-3 start. So Wynn is one of the recruits on that commit list that other teams are coming after. And this weekend, he was at South Carolina. What does it mean? I got to tell you guys about this new series that dropped on Amazon Prime about how NIL, yes, NIL has changed the college sports game. It's called The Money Game, executive produced by Shaquille O'Neal, LSU alum, and it's on Amazon Prime. It dropped September 10, where this is a great show. They follow Livy Dunn, Angel Reese, and Jaden Daniels, their last seasons at LSU. You guys are going to find this really interesting, I promise. Take a look.
Can I see how I look before we start?
July 1st, 2021, the NIL rule changed. That's the day my life changed.
The schools were reaping the benefits of the billions of dollars in TV contracts.
For almost 100 years, no one challenged it.
Now, the Livy Dunns and the Angel Reeses, they're getting 6- and 7-figure deals.
The more eyes you got on you, the more people are gonna try to tear you down.
I do get a lot of inappropriate comments.
All the stuff that they say on a daily basis is disgusting.
You're playing on the biggest stage every week.
Angel Reese is not active tonight.
Could you expand a little bit more on why Reese didn't play?
Yeah, I could, but I won't.
I don't have to tell you guys everything that's going on in my life.
And now, for the big moment, your 2023 Heisman winner is...
I guarantee there's some girl out here who's trying to get their hooks into Jaden Daniels.
I'm not going to let anybody take my focus from the game.
You don't have to play the money game, but if you want to capitalize, you can do that.
I love the game. I can also take care of my family for generations.
We thought of everything that would happen in NIL.
I wouldn't have $100 in my account as one of the star athletes at LSU, and I was confused why.
Reebok is a question mark.
They didn't reach out to you?
No. The whole team is so excited to have you.
These athletes are in a pressure cooker.
I remember saying that I wanted to be done, but winning is addicting.
I think this is the beginning of it, and it's beautiful.
There it is. I told you. Looks good, doesn't it? The Money Game. Amazon Prime. It's an inside look at NIL in a way that we have never seen it before. Amazon Prime gives you a raw, real look at how NIL is shaping NCAA sports and the lives of these athletes that are participating in it. And it's 6 parts. It's not just one. You can't tell a great story in one part. This is 6 parts. It's Amazon Prime. The Money Game. Go watch it.
Well, South Carolina is a program that's always been in the top 2 or 3 for Kevin Wynn. When he committed to Florida State, South Carolina was a mainstay in the recruitment. Georgia's a program that I still have a keen eye on with Kevin Wynn as the Bulldogs push for the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country, currently sitting at number 4. I think that they're trending in a good spot for Kevin Wynn, but South Carolina getting them to campus again. They're ready to swing in these big-time recruiting battles. Kevin Wynn has been to campus numerous times, so they already have his attention. It was another good visit, and we'll see what continues to happen.
All right. Now, tight end Mikkel Skinner, this was an important visit because we know that it's coming down between Kentucky and South Carolina. He's a recent decommitment of Cincinnati, highly coveted tight end, and he was at Kentucky the week prior, South Carolina this weekend. What's Skinner thinking? We getting down to a decision here?
Yeah, he's actually been to all 3 South Carolina games this fall. He was at their opener. Then, as you said, he was in Lexington. Then he returned this past weekend. Even though he was in the stands in Target Field watching South Carolina have its day against Kentucky, I still think coming out of that visit, he was a Wildcats lean. So it was big for South Carolina to get him back this weekend. His family stayed on campus into Sunday. So they're at the very least tightening this thing up. I think this is a recruitment that could be coming to an end in the next week or 2. Kentucky is the program I gave the edge going into the weekend. South Carolina continuing to work to try and change that as of Monday.
All right. Now, there was a big-time 2026 prospect on campus. Quarterback Jared Curtis out of Tennessee. He's committed to Georgia, but he was in South Carolina this weekend. What do you make of it?
Well, he was up front with Georgia, Kirby Smart, Mike Bobo and company, telling him that he was going to be in Columbia. He wants to check out some of these game atmospheres. Georgia still appears to be locked in with the Bulldogs, has been there numerous times since he committed. But South Carolina, his relationship with offensive coordinator Dow Logans has been one of his best throughout his entire process. He went into the locker room after the game, met with some of the coaches afterwards, and he's seeing the way Lenoris Sellers is coming along. He has always referenced Spencer Rattler kind of rebranding himself, rebuilding his career at South Carolina after transferring from Oklahoma. South Carolina's got some things that excite him, but as of right now, I still like where Georgia stands with Jared Curtis. But we all know with all of these recruitments, long way to go. We'll see how things continue to play out. But Jared Curtis has been nothing but honest with Georgia about all the moves he's making here on the trail.
All right, before we wrap up South Carolina, any other important 2026 recruits that were on campus that we need to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with the wide receiver position with Jordan Gidron and Donovan Murph. Those are a pair of wideouts in the junior class that I think that South Carolina is at the top or near the top for. Same goes for a couple of offensive linemen. They've really done a good job of recruiting the offensive line under Coach Beamer and his staff. Darius Gray, the number 4 interior offensive lineman in the country. He's been to campus several times. I'd be surprised if they don't lead. He'll be at Virginia Tech this weekend. Then you have in-state 4-star Zion Giles. I think that South Carolina is setting the tone in that recruitment. One of the most coveted players on their board, if not the top target on their board in 2026, edge rusher Rodney Dunham. He's from Myers Park in Charlotte. He has been to the last 2 South Carolina home games. He is also a baseball target. He met with the baseball staff on this visit in addition to the football staff. So I think South Carolina is in good shape for him and his teammate, 4-star receiver Brody Keefe. 2 more I want to mention. You got running back Jalen McGill, on 300 in-state recruit. I think South Carolina being able to show him where this program is at as they battle the nation's best to keep him home. This was an exciting visit. And then Samari Matthews is a top 10 cornerback prospect in 2026. He told me he had a fantastic time at South Carolina, and folks that spent time with him feel like that's authentic and think that the Gamecocks are way in that one as well. So South Carolina, 2 straight top 20 classes coming into this cycle. They're outside the top 30 right now, but they have some guys on the runway to make a move back in. And then 2026 is lining up for a surefire top 25 class, and we'll see how high they go with the season that they end up having this fall.
All right, South Carolina fans, tap in, talk to us. How do we feel about this weekend? I know the game didn't go the way you wanted to, but talk to us about recruiting. How do you feel about some of the guys on campus? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, let's talk some 5-star buzz. We are 3 weeks into the college football season, but we are over halfway done with the recruiting cycle, and we know that these games have impacts. Visits happen, minds get shifted, recruitments change, so let's get into it. Let's start at the top. Cornerback DJ Pickett, the 5-star from Zephyr Hills, Florida. He's made a couple visits this fall, but he's committed to LSU. Sounds solid, but DJ Pickett, what's going on with this recruitment?
Well, his family says they're 1,000% committed to LSU, and they don't want to be one of those prospects that ends up reopening, decommitting, flipping. But certainly Miami is still in the thick of that one. He was at Miami's win over Florida. Then he returned then he got back to Coral Gables the next Saturday for Miami's home opener with his mom, expected to return with his dad for the Florida State game. So Miami giving him a lot to think about. Mario Cristobal leading the charge in that recruitment. Number 1 player in the state, number 1 corner in the land, most coveted player on Miami's board. We've seen them get big flips every year. Cristobal's been there. They have their eye on DJ Pickett. Pickett's going to be back at LSU this weekend, as we previously reported, for the UCLA game. He's looking forward to returning for a couple more big home games, Oklahoma and Alabama. So LSU, 3 visits in the cards, but Miami battling to change the pulse of that recruitment.
All right, 5-star defensive lineman Elijah Griffin. He was a notable no-show this weekend. What does it mean for his recruitment?
Well, we love the way this continues to set up for Georgia. Look, Elijah Griffin's had great, authentic relationships with USC and Miami, but Georgia's always going to be hard to beat in this one. He's taking an official visit for his birthday. The weekend they host Mississippi State, and I wouldn't be surprised if this process is coming to a close and he's not in the fold shortly after, or maybe even during that trip to Athens.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, Interior offensive lineman Mikkel Carroll, the 5-star, is committed to Alabama. He made that commitment in June, and now he's taken a couple visits. He's gone to see Florida. He's also gone to see Miami. What do you make of Mikkel Carroll's recruitment?
I think he's going to end up sticking with Alabama. He was also at that Florida game at Miami this past weekend, but talking to him, talking to his family this morning, I think it's going to be extremely tough for anyone to flip him from Alabama. He may also take a visit out to USC, which he's already been upfront with Alabama about, just to tickle that West Coast excitement, get out there, see a game, fully go through this recruiting process. He's obviously talked about NIL being a factor. I think that after this weekend's visit to Miami and just conversations that he's had with the Alabama staff since that visit popped up, I think he's seen some exciting potential at Alabama, being an offensive lineman, playing for them in that arena as well. So again, I think Alabama, I think Mikkel Carroll is pretty locked in with the Crimson Tide.
All right, 5-star corner Naeem Alford. He's the number 1 ranked player in the state of Alabama, but he made an early commitment to the Ohio State Buckeyes. But now as we get closer to signing day, it looks like those in-state opportunities are looking a little bit more attractive to him.
Yeah, there's no question that Auburn's gaining momentum in this recruitment. They had him at Big Cat Weekend. They've already had him for 1 game. He's expected to be back on campus at the end of the month when Auburn hosts Oklahoma. But he also still remains excited about his potential future at Ohio State, looking at maybe the Iowa or Nebraska game return in Columbus, and then Oregon getting back out there for the game against the Buckeyes. So Dan Lanning's doing a great job in that recruitment. Certainly Tim Walton at Ohio State, Auburn doing all they can to keep him home, and dialogue remains with LSU and Alabama as well.
All right, 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babaloa is the only remaining uncommitted 5-star offensive tackle in the country, and his recruitment has been a bit of a mystery. Steve, what do you make of it?
Still having regular great conversation with the coaching staffs at Auburn, Michigan, and Oklahoma. Stanford was considered the favorite going into the summer official visits. I think he's got some family that would love to see him in Palo Alto. Missouri's rounding out the top 5. He wanted to decide before his senior season, but now that he hasn't, maybe he goes out and checks out some games. You know, he has been on inside most of these stadiums for his finalists. He has not been on the plains for a game inside Jordan-Hare Stadium. Auburn plays Oklahoma. Those are two of his favorites at the end of the month. Yeah. We'll see if he attends a game like that before making his college decision. I just know it seems like he's maybe at times felt like he knows what he's going to do, but hasn't been able to completely pull the trigger as of yet. So as this recruitment tightens, maybe he goes and checks out this Auburn-Oklahoma game in a couple weekends. Maybe he ends up elsewhere on a campus for a game day as well.
That would be a major development if he ended up out on the plains for a game. All right, 5-star defensive lineman Justice Terry. He's been trending heavily to Georgia since his decommitment from USC. Well, actually, he was committed to Georgia at one point, too. So is Georgia the front runner here?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's trending for this recruitment to come full circle, but Alabama trying to change that narrative. They've already had him on campus for 1 game this year. They've gotten him in for an official visit. Now he's expected back for the Georgia game later on. And games generally don't mean much in recruitments, but as Alabama tries to make up ground on Georgia, Freddie Roach leading the charge there. A win on Saturday in front of Justice Terry over Georgia. Maybe that helps continue to move the needle in their favor. But right now, Georgia still looks like they're going to be tough to beat for Justice Terry.
All right. Wide receiver Dallas Wilson, the 5-star out of Tampa, Florida, has been committed to the Oregon Ducks for almost a year and a half at this point. Now, Dallas Wilson also talking to a couple schools. What do you make of his recruitment?
Josh, my first day at On3, April 1, we shot a bunch of videos inside the On3 studios, and Dallas Wilson was one of the prospects we talked about, and you asked me if he was a stick or flip back then, and I said stick. Nothing has changed in the regard of the vigor that some of these other programs have continued to recruit him, from Florida to Miami to Texas. He was supposed to be at a Florida game, didn't make it. Supposed to be at a Miami game, didn't make it. Look, Oregon's going to have their hands full keeping him, but they are up for all battles and all comers right now. This is a young man that they covet. So right now I'm still in the stick camp, but we got time to see if I change my mind as this process continues.
All right, another one in kind of the same lane as Dallas Wilson. Wide receiver Caleb Cunningham, while committed to Alabama, he still has made a trip to Ole Miss. I think he'll probably make a trip to Auburn at some point if he hasn't already. But what about Caleb Cunningham's recruitment? What do you make of it?
Yeah, working this one with our colleague Chad Simmons. Ole Miss is definitely a program to watch as he continues through his process. And he was back at Alabama recently and committed to them shortly after his official visit at the end of the summer. And I could definitely see him sticking with Jamarcus Shepard, Kalen DeBoer, and Alabama. But Ole Miss, they still have their official visit in play. They still got some game visits down the road this season that could be some big opportunities to get him back on campus. So I don't think we're done seeing him in Oxford for games. Auburn, if they land Deuce Knight, does that help them gain another inch in the recruitment of Caleb Cunningham? The dialogue hasn't stopped there as well. So he continues to work through his process. We don't expect any final answers with him till December.
All right, let's stay in the state of Mississippi. Quarterback Deuce Knight, he's been on flip watch since he left Big Cat Weekend at the end of July. Deuce Knight and Auburn have been an item, but there's rumors that maybe he's going to get back to Notre Dame. What do you think about Deuce Knight and a potential flip to Auburn?
Well, it'll be interesting to see where he goes at the end of the month, Josh. Auburn looking to line up his official visit that weekend against Oklahoma. And then Notre Dame, they play one of their biggest home games of the season against Louisville, and they're trying to get top targets and commits back for that one. So it could be telling where he visits that weekend, which program completely has all the momentum. I still like my on-3 RPM for Auburn. I still wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss makes another run as well. He did visit them recently in the in-state program. They're pushing for Deuce Knight too.
Man, I thought that one would be over by now, but it still drags on. All right, wide receiver Jerome Miles, speaking about getting this one over with soon, it's going to come to an end. His recruitment, one of the only remaining top 10 wide receivers in America, will make his decision on Wednesday. Steve, preview this for us.
Well, I like where USC stands. I logged an on-3 RPM in favor of the Trojans the Sunday after his official visit nearly 2 weekends ago. And when he moved up his commitment date, I felt even better about that decision. The Trojans putting together a sneaky good receiver class with guys like Romero Ison and Corey Sims already in the fold. If they can land the explosive 6'3" Jerome Miles to the fold, be one of the more dynamic pass catching groups in the country. They're still trying to flip Dalen McCutcheon from Florida State as well. But Jerome Miles committing on Wednesday, and I like where USC stands going into that one.
All right, now let's stay with USC. Julian Lewis, the quarterback commitment from Carrollton, Georgia. I'll make this one real easy for you, Steve. Stick or flip?
I'm still in the stick camp. Scott Schrader, our colleague, reporting that he will be back at USC for the Wisconsin game. Indiana was trying to get him in town for the Maryland game that weekend. Look, Julian Lewis is still having dialogue. Him and his family are still talking to Auburn. They're still talking to Colorado. They're still talking to Indiana. So we'll see what happens. But my intel favors him sticking with the Trojans. He's going to get back to campus. USC recruiting at a high level on defense is a big factor for him. He's got to love the way they're recruiting wideouts and tailbacks. And they have a young offensive line that Lincoln Riley and company are very excited about. Julian Lewis always been their top target. I think he loves USC and the idea of playing for Riley, but they haven't completely shut this thing down behind the scenes, so we'll see what happens moving forward.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the number one athlete in America, 5-star Michael Terry III. He was at Texas this weekend. He's been to Nebraska. What do you make of his recruitment right now?
Well, I still like where Texas stands. Look, he had a great experience at Nebraska 2 weekends ago for the win over Colorado, sat in the front row, got around a lot of Nebraska's commits and top targets. That coaching staff he's really vibed with and truly believes that Nebraska is going to turn this thing around and win at a high level. But Texas, close to home, been there several times, always says it's a great experience. Texas wanted to get him back for this weekend against UTSA, where it was a little lesser of a weekend on the trail where he could get more time with the players on the team, more time with the staff, more time discussing his potential future, playing in a variety of ways in that Steve Sarkisian, A.J. Milwee offense. He's going to come back for the Georgia game, which is going to be ramped up with blue chip recruits and a heck of an atmosphere. Oregon could get a return visit for the Ohio State game as well. So not exactly sure on a timetable, but still like my on-3 RPM in favor of Texas.
I agree with you there. Now, Interior offensive lineman Solomon Thomas is committed to Florida State, but even before Florida State got off to this 0-3 start, you were hearing rumors that LSU was heavily involved, the Gators, Miami wanted to get involved in this recruitment, but now Solomon Thomas might have some options with Florida State's 0-3 start. What are you hearing on the Florida State commitment?
Well, it's been a little bit since I've talked to Solomon Thomas, but the one thing that we know for sure is that LSU is never going to give up. Offensive line is always one of the most important positions that a Brian Kelly staff attacks on the trail. They've recruited some of the best offensive line classes in the country year in and year out. And Solomon Thomas likes the way that they've developed those guys in Baton Rouge, likes the way that those are their team leaders at the point of attack and just the whole locker room. And there was times this summer where I thought he was close to flipping to LSU, but Florida State was able to put that to rest with their late summer visit. But LSU going to make another charge, and we'll see how it continues to play out.
All right,
Miami's going to swing there too, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And now edge Javian Hilson. He was committed to Florida State, decommitted, was expected to show at UF this weekend, did not. So what's up next for his recruitment now that he's back on the market?
Well, our colleague Hayes Fawcett reported 7 schools still being in the mix there. One school that I think is a dark horse is UCF, but I still like my on 3 RPM in favor of Texas for Javian Hilson. But this is a recruitment where he's talking about taking it to December, but he has had pop-up commitments to Alabama and Florida State. It's this recruitment has turned on a dime several times. I feel good about the Longhorns right now. We'll see how it continues to play out. There was another recruitment that turned on a dime a few times this cycle, and Jamie French from Alabama to Ohio State, LSU, and Miami in there, but Texas won out for him, and I think they're ultimately going to win out for Javian Hilson as well.
Yeah, and Javian Hilson was a one-time Alabama commitment as well, so he is not afraid to make a commitment. Cornerback Ben Hanks, he's another one that the Sharks are circling. He's committed to UF. He's a legacy prospect, so the Gators do have that going for them. But it was a tight decision between UF and Miami when he originally decided about a month or two ago. Yep. So what's Ben Hanks thinking right now?
Well, I think Miami's viewed him as a long game type recruitment all the way. I think they knew it was going to be tough sledding against Florida coming into the season, but it's like, let's play this out. We open up the year in Gainesville. Let's take care of business there. Then let's play well and let's see what happens at Florida. I think we can all agree it couldn't be turning out better for Miami right now. You know, it's early in the campaign, so we'll see how it continues to go. But from the long game approach, the things are happening that Miami wanted to put them in the thick of this one. His twin sister's a volleyball player. They want to go to the same school. She wants to play volleyball, so that is a factor, and they've had those discussions with these programs as well.
All right, Georgia Tech got in on offensive tackle Damola Ajidahun early and got him committed, but now the big dogs are calling. Who is involved in this recruitment right now?
Well, I thought he was going to commit to Georgia in the summer, and then around the time of the Kirby Smart scavenger hunt, things started to go away from Georgia and pick up with Georgia Tech, but the Bulldogs have circled back hard. He remains a priority for them. And I kind of like the way that's starting to pick up for them. That doesn't discount the fact that I think Brent Key and company can hold them. But there's no question Georgia is picking up steam with him. And South Carolina and Ohio State are a couple others to maybe keep an eye on.
All right, wide receiver C.J. Wiley committed to Florida State during the summer, but when at the time of his commitment, it really shocked the recruiting industry because most experts, not just at On3, but most experts expected LSU or maybe Georgia, but C.J. Wiley committed to FSU, and now he's still continuing to talk to LSU and Georgia. What do you make of this recruitment?
Yeah, I did not put in an on 3 RPM for C.J. Wiley leading up to his decision because I thought it could go a couple different ways. Wasn't quite sure how it was going to play out. And I think you still get that sense here during the season. He's saying the right things about his verbal to Florida State. And I think he loves Coach Dugans, Coach Norvell, and that staff and the idea of playing for them and some of the wideouts that he's put out and some of the exciting offenses. Georgia has never gone away. James Coley and company pushing hard. LSU legacy. Both his parents played sports at LSU with his dad playing football. And then Auburn, they continue to lurk for C.J. Wiley as well. Chad Simmons was recently out to see C.J. Wiley, has a good story on the On3 network there, but all those programs still in the mix, still in communication with one of the more exciting pass catchers in the 2025 class.
All right, last prospect we got to hit on is running back Usman Kroma. He left Auburn and said, I'm ready to commit. No, not yesterday, but he left Auburn saying, I'm ready to commit on September 28th. So we are less than 2 weeks away from his announcement. Usman Kroma visited Georgia earlier this season, visited Auburn. What do you make of his recruitment?
Well, the On3 RPM is on Auburn right now for Kroma. Love them coming out of his visit there a couple weeks ago. And then he got to Georgia. Chad Simmons and I both hearing that Georgia turning it up a notch, which certainly makes you factor them in strongly. Even with him coming back to Auburn this past weekend, it's hard to ignore a late charge with Georgia. So again, my prediction is on Auburn as they push for the nation's #1 class, sitting at number 5. But the Bulldogs could get this one done as well.
All right, let us know. Comment section below. How do you feel about these latest developments on some of the top recruits in America? Let us know. Comment section below. All right, Steve, let's hit some quick hitters now. Texas A&M is quietly continuing to recruit Oregon commitment Trey McNutt, the 5-star out of Cleveland, Ohio. Is still having conversations with the Aggies. What's going on here?
Well, I don't have him on Flip Watch, but that was one where Texas A&M got several visits, including when his decision got pushed back. He returned to College Station, then went back to Oregon. Now, I think he loves Oregon, but they continue to communicate with Texas A&M. Lamont Rogers, another one, Texas A&M not throwing the towel in on too, Josh. Top 100 offensive lineman that was at the Notre Dame game, currently committed to Missouri. He still has dialogue with Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and others. So the Aggies just got that dominant win in Gainesville, which was huge for them on the recruiting trail. Churn out a couple more wins, and we'll see if they can't get the spatula out on some of these top targets.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about Miami here. They are continuing to recruit Vernell Brown III. Now, Vernell Brown III is a legacy prospect. His father played in that secondary about 25 years ago or so. And Vernell Brown made his commitment to the Gators in August. Is he still having communication with the Miami Hurricanes, though?
I just think Miami viewed that recruitment similar to Ben Hanks. Long game, play these seasons out, open up against Florida, get a win in the Swamp, then play at a high level all year and see what happens at Florida. I think Vernell Brown III loves Florida, always envisioned seeing himself playing inside the Swamp. But if there was ever a time where maybe you could sneak in there and get him to envision himself at another place, that time is now, and Miami is one of the programs that's not going to take their foot off the gas. I think that Florida is going to, if the Billy Napier era doesn't work out, they're obviously going to hire a coach that you would imagine will have some buzz to him. He would be one of the guys that I would think would be a heavy target to stick with Florida through a coaching change. But the landscape is there for, if there was ever a landscape there for Vernell Brown III to maybe see himself elsewhere, that time is now, and Miami's trying to capitalize.
All right. Now, USC, 19 total commitments. They're really just putting the final touches on this 2025 class. But you think there's a couple flip targets that they would like to add to this class before it's all over?
Well, they're not going away on guys like Dorian Brew, committed to Oregon, and Dalen McCutcheon, committed to Florida State. Those are two guys that they continue to recruit. Certainly, we still love where they stand with Jerome Miles, who's going to announce his decision on Wednesday. Did they get greedy at linebacker with a player like Madden Faramo, who's in state? That's certainly high on USC right now. But the Trojans, they got a chance to keep it rolling on Saturday, Josh, against Michigan in Ann Arbor for one of the biggest games of the weekend. So the Trojans, one of the hottest teams on the trail and on the field. We'll see if we feel that way on Saturday night. But thanks, everybody, for tuning into this episode of the Wiltfong Whip Around. Please hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel so you are up to date on the best recruiting shows on the internet, from the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg, the 5-Star Flex with Phillip Dukes, our brand new recruit reaction show that's been crushing it with Josh, myself, and Hayes Fawcett, special guests, and then certainly the Whip Around, which will return on Thursday.